All right. Next, we have the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency Annual Report, and the presentation is going to be done by Mike, the Executive Director.
Okay. Thank you, members of the council, for this opportunity to update the city of Yuba City on levee projects in the Sutter Butte Basin. Again, my name's Mikey Nami, and I'm the executive director of the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency. So I've updated the council relatively recently as a result of last year's rather exciting year. So I'm going to just sort of hit on the highlights, so don't be put off by all the words on this. I'll be skipping through a number of these slides. So I'll provide a little bit of background, some of the current projects that we're working on, some new projects that we're working on. I'd like to focus a lot of attention on the Sutter Basin Flood Risk Management Project. That's basically bureaucraties for the federal project that we anticipate starting this year, and then ongoing and future work. So you've seen this slide many times. The SBUFCA goals haven't changed since 2010, 200-year protection for the urbanized areas in the north, 100-year protection or equivalent for the remainder of the basin to the south. We have a strategic plan that's posted on the website with more details. This is a slide that shows the current projects and completed projects that SBUFCA is embarked on or has completed, and then some state and federal projects that you're going to be hearing about in the coming year. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly. Of course, sort of the big dog in the room is the Feather River West Levee project. That's a roughly $300 million project that extends from Thermalito After Bay in the north to Star Bend in the south. It's an fix-in-place levee repair consisting primarily of slurry walls, and which I presented to the council previously. Another project you're going to be hearing about that we anticipate starting, assuming that FERC and the Corps of Engineers are agreeable, is the Oroville Wildlife Area. That's about a $20 million project that provides additional transitory storage for the Feather River. That's just a way of lowering flood stage on the west side of the river by providing more room for the river to move. The most recent project, of course, was the Yuba City Emergency Levee Repair. That was not originally scoped for the big Feather River West Levee project, and it was done as an emergency contract. That work has largely been completed with a few odds and ends. And finally, in the south is the Laurel Avenue Levee Repair. It's a 1-mile critical repair that was just completed at the end of last year. Now, the state and federal projects that I briefed the council on before are a number of emergency repairs. These are projects that were carried out by the state of California. An erosion repair right near the 5th Street Bridge that many folks saw, in addition to SBUFCA's efforts on the other side of the levee through downtown Yuba City, as well as erosion repairs further south down by Laurel Avenue. Many of those rock repairs that you saw, that rock is going to stay in place for the long term, and the state is in the process of making it a permanent fixture as for future levee protection, all the way down to the 99 Bridge. The big project that you're going to be hearing more about and that's received some attention in Washington, D.C. is the Sutter Basin Flood Risk Management Project. So, don't be put off the words. I'm not going to read all of these. Basically, when we get money from the state of California to build projects, we call them state-local projects. State and SBUFCA pool their money and they build things like the Feather River West Levee project that is essentially completed from Thermalito After Bay in the north to Star Bend in the south. And then there's a small repair, relatively small repair down in the south. Again, a state local project that was completed at Laurel Avenue. The state doesn't just sort of hand out this money and say, do good things, because this is work that's normally done by the federal government. It's normally done by the Corps of Engineers. And of course, many years ago, about 10 years ago, when the bonds were passed, the state said, we can't wait. We're going to fund local agencies like SBUFCA, like SAFCA, like West Sacramento and others to advance these projects. But in exchange for that, we partner with the Corps of Engineers to make sure that we, Sabufka, and the federal government get credit for doing essentially what the federal government does. Now we are running down to the sort of the end of our funding, state, local funding. And we've now completed with state, local funding, essentially 88% of what would normally be a federal project. So 88% of traditionally the federal government's share of work has been completed, leaving a very modest investment by the federal government of $50 million for a $77 million project to finish the job. And so this entire project has been authorized by the federal government, but of course it doesn't get built until appropriations take place. And so we're eagerly awaiting for the federal government to get a budget in place. And we've been doing a lot of lobbying in D.C. over these past several months. And if there is a silver lining to what happened at Oroville, if there is a silver lining to the much of the duress associated with that event and the high water, it is that our community has gotten a lot of attention from the federal government to fix this and get it done very quickly. So we are hopeful that come the end of the federal fiscal year, we'll see an appropriation to finish this work and have the Corps of Engineers invest in the project that the state so far is not willing to fund. This is about 5 miles. It extends from the southern end of Star Bend, roughly about Tudor Road, down to the north end of the Laurel Avenue project we just completed, roughly Cypress Avenue, if you know where that is. It's about $77 million worth of work. The federal government is expected to come up with about $50 million worth of that. The balance will be cost shared with state and Sabufka. I'm not going to say too much about this, but the repairs that you're going to see in the federal project are just like the repairs that we've been doing for the past 4 years. It's primarily deep under seepage. There are some other repairs, but it's primarily deep under seepage, and the Corps of Engineers will be constructing slurry wall just like the slurry wall that Sabufka has been installing these past couple of years. So what is the ongoing work? What's happening right now? So there is essentially all of the work on the Feather River West Levee project, all the major construction is done. That's the big $300 million project. The Laurel Avenue is completed. Reaches 14th through 16th through downtown Yuba City are essentially completed, but there's still some closeout work that folks are going to be asking you about. And this includes some project closeout activities, and this is primarily concerned with right-of-way for the what we call the GAP projects. This is around UPRR, the railroad. We have some relief wells down south and primarily rural area. At Laurel Avenue, that work is pretty much completed. You're not going to see any activities associated with that. Now, the Yuba City levee repairs, we still have some work to do to replace some stairs. You're going to see some stump removals taking place over the winter. We're doing some welding on some pipes at Gilsizer Slough to affect stormwater drainage. And then, depending on how the weather is over the next several months, we'll be doing some paving. We have a levee fencing contract for all of these areas that we're going to be putting out to bid by the end of the month. But as the list denotes, it's pretty much all the heavy civil construction is largely completed. So future work, and this should be my last slide, is the Oroville Wildlife Area Flood Stage Reduction Project. That's about a $20 million job. We have some hang-ups with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, ironically, because the project mitigates issues associated with Oroville Dam, and we have some issues with a Core 408 permit, which we don't believe this is worthy of, but nonetheless, we're going through that process. We have a DWR Small Communities Grant. That is a feasibility study for everything south of Yuba City to improve flood protection for all those areas that have not seen the bulk of the money with regard to levee repairs. I talked about the Sutter Basin Flood Risk Management Project. The one thing I want to point out is that this federal project is highly competitive. The Corps of Engineers is billions of dollars behind as a backlog. So there are literally hundreds of projects lined up to get a few new starts for construction. And we're one of this 100 or so projects. So in order for us to be competitive, we're doing a lot of the work that the Corps would normally do, like the design and permitting, so that we can raise our hands and we say, well, who's ready to go? Who's ready to go to construction? We can be that project. We're working with Sutter County, Butte County on the remapping. Once the projects are completed, maps will be changed for the FEMA maps will be changed. These are the flood maps that dictate sort of terms and conditions for flood insurance rates. I'm not going to talk too much about resource conservation investment strategy, but that's a way of reducing our costs for the federal project. And there's some miscellaneous closeout activities. Most notably is right-of-way. We're acquiring right-of-way for the federal project. So there's a lot of activity associated with that and getting encroachment agreements for all the work that's been completed. So that's my last slide. This is some public information and some places to get additional detail on SBUFCA activities. Encourage everybody to attend the SBUFCA board meetings, particularly over the next couple of months, as we hopefully initiate work on the federal project. And with that, if there are any questions, be happy to respond.
Thank you, Mike. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Nope. All right. Thank you.